homage to Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to Manjushri, homage to all the lineage masters. The supreme, profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Now, let us continue our study of the Bodhicharyavatara. In the first chapter of the Bodhicharyavatara, we are currently discussing the qualities of bodhicitta. Earlier, we divided the qualities of bodhicitta into common and special qualities. Now, we are focusing on the special qualities. We are using scriptural evidence to explain why it is reasonable that bodhicitta possesses such immeasurable qualities. We are also using logical reasoning to demonstrate the validity of the qualities of bodhicitta. Of course, some people may not be very clear about what scriptural evidence and logical reasoning mean. So, what is scriptural evidence? In the Dharma, there are some profound principles. Sometimes, relying solely on our own wisdom and the six consciousnesses, we may not be able to reach a conclusion we may not be able to fully understand. In such cases, we need to rely on the sacred teachings of the Buddha or the treatises of great accomplished masters and wise beings of the past. We use their writings to clarify these points. So when we use sutras and treatises as the basis for our understanding, this is called scriptural evidence. Then, what is logical reasoning? For some questions that are not so profound, we may not need to rely on sutras for proof. Instead, we can analyze them with our own wisdom. After analysis, if we reach a reasonable conclusion, this is called logical reasoning. So, especially for many lay practitioners who are just beginning to study the Dharma, or even for those who have studied for some time, there are still some terms and some terminology in the Dharma that you may not understand. In that case, your study will always remain at a surface level without truly understanding the Dharma. So, I hope that when you study the Dharma every day, you should try to master the basic Dharma terms and key terminology. If you do not understand, you can exchange questions and ideas, because in the sutras there are actually many specialized terms, and the treatises are the same. They also have many specialized terms. If we do not understand these technical terms, it is hard to go deeper. Even if you attend teachings regularly, you may still not understand them. As a result, you cannot grasp the true meaning. For example, when we study the Vinaya, there are many specialized terms in the Vinaya. At the beginning, it is difficult to become familiar with these terms. When we study Buddhist logic or the Abhidharmakosha, there are also many technical terms. The same principle applies. Even in worldly studies such as physics, chemistry, electronics, mathematics, or geometry, every field of study has its own specialized terminology. So, at the beginning, you need to put in the effort. Especially when you encounter a new term, you need to understand its meaning and also the wording itself. This is something everyone should pay attention to. Otherwise, we cannot repeatedly explain each term all the time. This time, when we encounter a new term, I will do my best to explain it, though for some Dharma friends who have studied the scriptures and treatises for many years, it may not be necessary, but I think that even you have studied for a while, you may not fully understand the meaning of every basic term. So today, you should remember what scriptural evidence and logical reasoning mean. Here, we are using logical reasoning to explain the validity of bodhicitta. The validity of logical reasoning is divided into two. 1, excellence of intention. 2, excellence of application. Here, intention refers to our motivation, our aspiration. It means the attitude of generating bodhicitta. This motivation is extremely noble, and it is reasonable according to logical reasoning. There is also the aspect of application, which refers to the actions of generating bodhicitta, our thoughts, speech, and bodily activities. We explain it from these aspects. First, let us look at the superiority of intention. 1, the vastness of the object of intention. 2, how it surpasses worldly motivation. The motivation of bodhicitta is extremely vast. It surpasses the states of many people in the world, as well as the gods and so on. So we will explain this from two aspects. First, the vastness of the object of intention, the root text says, if someone who benevolently intends to merely eliminate sharp pains in sentient beings' heads possesses immeasurable merit, what need to speak of those who wish to rid all sentient beings of untold distresses and endow each one with boundless qualities? The literal meaning here should be clear. If we simply wish to relieve the suffering of some beings, even if it is just their headache or minor illnesses, such an intention brings great merit. If someone with a compassionate heart merely wishes to use medicine to cure the headaches or fevers of a few sentient beings, then it proves that they possess a benevolent mind and can accumulate immeasurable merit. In our daily lives, when we see someone with a severe headache, this is just one example. It does not have to be a headache, but here the example is someone with a headache. Sometimes a headache can be very hard to bear. I remember when we once watched the performance of the life story of the Buddha, there was a scene where the Buddha went out and saw birth, aging, sickness, and death. One layperson acted out the scene by wrapping a towel tightly around his head and rolling on the ground in pain. It really looked extremely painful and unbearable. When the Buddha saw this, he immediately understood the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death in samsara, and later aspired to renounce the world he decided to be ordained. So, in similar situations, just seeing the suffering of others can move us to compassion. If we feel compassion, wanting to help them, maybe by offering some medicine, this is a mind of benevolence. Sometimes when some students here have a headache, others sitting around will immediately offer different kinds of medicine. This is also a benevolent mind. You truly want to help, thinking you see that he is really struggling. So you immediately take out some medicine from your bag. This is also a benevolent mind. This kind of intention is completely free from selfishness. In this process, you are not thinking of yourself at all. It is simply a wish to help others. And such a mind truly possesses immeasurable merit. Why is that? Because it is the mind of benefiting others, the wish to help others. When the Buddha attained enlightenment, he perfected in two aspects. On the one hand, he perfected his own qualities, and on the other, he benefited sentient beings. But between these two, which merit is greater? Patrul Rinpoche had spoken about this in his teaching. The greatest merit comes from benefiting sentient beings. Sometimes we may think that the merit of attaining Buddhahood is greatest, but in fact, the merit of benefiting sentient beings is even greater. This is because it is the mind of wishing to benefit others. Such a mind brings tremendous merit. How much more so if one wishes to eliminate all the countless sufferings of sentient beings, all the physical and mental suffering of sentient beings, and even wishes for all sentient beings to attain immeasurable qualities. For example, basically every being experiences different level of physical discomfort and emotional suffering. Everyone inevitably faces these difficulties. If we give rise to the supreme bodhicitta, wishing that all sentient beings everywhere may all their suffering, whether physical pain or lack of necessities, completely disappear. Furthermore, may all sentient beings attain the temporary happiness of human and God realms, and ultimately attain the supreme qualities of perfect, unsurpassed enlightenment. If we make such an aspiration, then the merit is truly beyond measure. Why is that? Because we can see clearly that even just wishing to relieve the headache of a single sentient being already brings immeasurable merit. But here, the object of our intention is countless sentient beings, and the time extends through lifetime after lifetime, all the way to Buddhahood. The happiness we wish they attain is not ordinary worldly happiness, but the happiness of perfect Buddhahood and enlightenment. And the sentient beings are not just a few, but countless in number. We aspire that all their suffering is eliminated and all qualities are attained. So the merit is truly immeasurable. There is no need to say more. That is why, in this section, we use logical reasoning to explain this instead of using scriptural evidence. Of course, generally speaking, we rely on scriptural evidence. We do have great confidence in Buddha's words. Oh, the Buddha said this, so there must be great merit. But some people may wonder, could it be a provisional teaching? Even if the Buddha said it, is it definitive or provisional? But this statement is not a provisional teaching. It is truly definitive. What does definitive mean? It means it is truly real, not merely expedient words, spoken to or guide beings of a particular capacity. This is what is called a truly definitive teaching. So we should know why we choose the approach of logical reasoning here. The merits. The Buddha explained in sutras are very clear and explicit. A wise one can see right away how great the qualities of bodhicitta are. Because the Buddha said so, many immediately develop faith. But some people would like to analyze with their own wisdom. If you analyze with your own wisdom, you can also realize that indeed, if one gives rise to such bodhicitta, the merit is certainly vast. Each can observe this topic with logical reasoning. Does generating such bodhicitta have merit or not? We should reflect, it certainly does. Consider the vast scope of the object of our intention and the way bodhicitta is generated. Reflecting this way, the merit is truly boundless. There is nothing more to say. As ordinary beings, our physical eyes and conceptual mind cannot fully comprehend the true nature of all things. In such cases, we have no choice but to trust the Vajra words of the Buddha. But in some cases, we can also use our own wisdom to discern. So in this matter, when we analyze with our own wisdom, we can completely understand that bodhicitta definitely has such qualities. Of course, for those who have faith, they can establish its merit by relying on the Buddha's words. Still, some people may doubt and think that they have not seen it with their own direct perception. I cannot see this merit directly, so it does not exist. If you do not accept anything that you have not directly perceived, then how about things like black holes in space, or electromagnetic waves in space, or even the bacteria on our bodies? We cannot see these things with our naked eyes, no matter how we would like to. We just cannot directly perceive them. Yet we cannot deny their existence. We cannot deny their existence simply because we cannot perceive them with our six sense faculties. In the same way, the statement that bodhicitta has immeasurable benefits can be proved with logical reasoning. Through careful observation, we can conclude there is definitely such great merit. Meanwhile, we can also verify its validity by relying on scriptures. Since the Buddha clearly stated this in many sutras, the Tantra of Subahu's questions also gives relevant teachings. The meaning of that scriptural evidence is as follows. For example, when we see the suffering of aging in all sentient beings, we observe and contemplate their suffering, wishing for them to be free from it. The merit of this increases moment by moment and is immeasurable. In the same way, if we take all sentient beings as the object, not only contemplating their suffering of aging, but also the suffering of birth, sickness, and death, then the merit is even more vast. This includes the suffering of illness, the suffering of birth, the suffering of death, plus the suffering of separation from loved ones, the suffering of encountering the unwanted, and all the fundamental and secondary sufferings of human life. Beyond humans, there is also the suffering of ignorance among animals, the suffering of cold and heat of hell, the suffering of hungry ghosts. If we take all the physical and mental suffering of all sentient beings as our object and wish for them to attain happiness, then the merit increases moment by moment and is truly beyond measure. This is what the Buddha said to Subhuti. That is the first point. The Buddha continued explaining to Subhuti the second point. If one person contemplates all sentient beings in the world and wishes them to attain happiness and be free from suffering for a single instant, is that merit great? Of course, the merit is extremely great. If someone generates bodhicitta, wishing that all beings, not just for a moment, but from now until countless future lives, may they never be separated from the happiness of human and heavenly rebirth, and ultimately attain the state of perfect enlightenment, then such happiness is truly beyond words. This is the second point. Now, the third question, the Buddha also told Subhuti about this. If we make the aspiration for all sentient beings to attain the state of Arhat or Pratika Buddha, is that merit great? Of course, it is unimaginable, and this merit increases in every moment. But if someone wishes that all sentient beings not only attain the state of Shravaka or Arhat, but ultimately attain full Buddhahood with all the Buddha's unique qualities, like the 18 unshed qualities and the 4 fearlessnesses, then the merit from that is even more inexpressible. In the Tantra of Subahu's questions, these points are clearly explained. In our daily practice, we should generate such bodhicitta. There is no doubt the merit is vast, as just explained. Why is the merit so great? First, because the object of our intention is so vast, and our own mind is extremely vast as well. So, by practicing in this way and making such aspirations, the merit of bodhicitta is truly beyond measure. This is also mentioned in the commentary. Some commentators explain this using the story of the daughter of Zhao. Regarding this point, as we just discussed, even by wishing to relieve the headache of a single being, one can accumulate immeasurable merit. When explaining this passage, some commentators, as we've seen in the words of my perfect teacher and other texts, they interpret it with the story of the daughter of Zhao. Several great Indian masters also explained it this way. Many of you are quite familiar with the story of the daughter of Zhao. He was from a merchant family, but his mother never revealed his caste to him. For a long time, he did not know his true caste. Later, he found out his caste through other means, that he was from a family of merchants who went to sea to seek treasures. When he was about to leave, his mother could not bear to let him go. At that time, he said, "You are saying inauspicious words to me, just as I am about to leave for the ocean to seek treasures." Then he forcefully kicked his mother's head with his foot. Then he left home and headed for the ocean. On his journey, the ship encountered disaster and was destroyed. He then fell straight into hell. In hell, an iron wheel began to spin on his head, and his brain matter spilled out everywhere. At that moment, he thought, "In this world, there may be others like me, who were unfilial to their mothers and kicked them with their feet. If there are such pitiful beings, may I take on all their suffering. Let me bear it all myself. May they attain happiness." He gave rise to this aspiration. At that moment, the iron wheel, or as some commentaries say, a golden wheel, rose up into the air, and he was immediately reborn in Tushita heaven. So, from this story, we can see that just by wishing to take on the suffering of beings in hell, or even just in this world, especially those who were unfilial to their mothers, and wishing for their suffering to ripen on himself, the merit of giving rise to such a mind led him to be immediately reborn in Tushita heaven. Generally, to be reborn in such heavenly realms, as we know from the Abhidharma Kosha, one needs a certain level of meditative concentration. But through the power of such a mind, he was immediately reborn in the heavenly realm. This story illustrates the power of bodhicitta. You see, by generating bodhicitta and wishes to relieve this one specific type of suffering can attain such merit. If we generate bodhicitta to relieve all sufferings of all beings, how could we not attain such merit? There are many stories like this. For example, Venerable Longchenpa, I remember this story, is also quoted in the Great Chariot. Our teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, in a previous life, was born in a hell where the inhabitants were forced to pull wagons. He was harnessed to a wagon with another person, Kamarupa, and the hell guards beat them harshly because they couldn't get the vehicle move. At that time, he felt great compassion for his companion Kamarupa and told the wardens to release his companion and let him bear all the suffering instead. The wardens became even angrier, saying, "Each being must bear their own karma. Who can take it for them?" And they continued to beat him with various weapons. At that moment, he thought, may I take on the suffering of all sentient beings in the world. As soon as he gave rise to this thought, he was reborn in the heaven of the 33. This was the beginning of our master Buddha Shakyamuni first generating bodhicitta. There are such stories as the origin of his first generation of bodhicitta. When His Holiness taught the Bodhicharyavatara, he said that not only are these stories used as explanations, but also the stories of worldly loving and kindness. In the past, at the confluence of the Ganges in India, there were a mother and a daughter who gave rise to compassion for each other, and because of that moment of loving kindness, or that virtuous mind, they were both reborn in the heavenly realms. Here we can see that even a very brief virtuous mind within an extremely limited scope can lead one to rebirth in the heavenly realms. So now if we generate bodhicitta for the sake of all sentient beings as vast as the sky, then the merit we attain is beyond words. This is another way to explain it. Not only do we use Buddhist stories to illustrate this, I think this point can be explained as well from a worldly perspective. For example, organ donation, bone marrow donation, and blood donation. There are many such good deeds in our daily lives. People all feel that these are truly remarkable acts of kindness. For example, some people donate organs or even brain tissue. I'm not sure about brain tissue, but bone marrow for sure. People like this are often praised by major news outlets and media reports. Meanwhile, they often receive all kinds of honors and certificates of recognition. But there is still a significant difference between these good deeds and actions driven by bodhicitta. From the aspect of duration, the good deeds are only carried out for a short period of time, maybe over a few decades or even just a few days. Some people, in times of emergency, act with a virtuous mind for a few days. At that time, they give rise to such a virtuous mind. Indeed, their actions are truly remarkable and worthy of praise. But the object of bodhicitta is all sentient beings, so the merit is even more unmeasurable. Nowadays, there are some charitable organizations in society. For example, in Taiwan, there is the Tzuchi Foundation. Whenever a disaster occurs in any country, their response is always very timely. No matter which country in the world is affected by a tsunami, flood, earthquake, or even terrorist attacks and wars, whenever there is a disaster, they are often the first to arrive on the scene. For example, when there was an earthquake in Taiwan, before any other rescue teams arrived, they were already on the scene. When 9/11 happened, they arrived before many other rescue teams. This includes situations in Afghanistan and tsunamis in Southeast Asia. Before any international rescue teams could get there, they were already present. And at that time, they not only provided material aid to others, but also offered comfort and psychological support to each individual. This is their approach. So, across all 5 continents, the Tzuchi Foundation from Taiwan is widely praised and considered truly remarkable. But from another perspective, specifically from the Mahayana Buddhist point of view, their activities, though wonderful, have been ongoing for maybe over 30 years. And their membership is said to be around 8 million. According to the report, different reports give different numbers. In any case, the time and the number of people involved are both limited. Their focus is mainly on people in this world who are suffering from disasters. That is, among humans, those who are facing disasters. Once they have helped these people, it's not clear if there will be a second round of help, but the merit of aspirational bodhicitta is not like this. The scope of its focus is truly vast and boundless. It encompasses limitless sentient beings, not just humans. Of course, these charitable organizations do not distinguish by religion or by ethnicity. Wherever there is a major disaster in the world, they are often the first to arrive. Now, even in many places in mainland China, their charitable organizations are present, I think. In this world, everyone agrees that their actions are truly remarkable, and indeed they are. For most of us, it may be difficult to do what they do. They are certainly worthy of praise. But if you compare the scale of that intention to someone who generates aspirational bodhicitta, what is the difference? Each of us should reflect on this. Nowadays, many people especially admire Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft. Indeed, in terms of worldly charitable deeds, he is greatly admired and considered remarkable. Although it is said that his personal wealth amounts to $48 billion, or perhaps more, according to some reports, he is said to live a rather simple and ordinary life. Often, in various places around the world, he helps those in poverty, including those suffering from the greatest disasters. He sometimes goes to the most difficult places to help people there. Many young people nowadays especially dream of being like him. I want to be the boss of Microsoft. I want to be like him. Some even dream about it, rejoicing and feeling admiration. But in reality, when compared to the merit of genuine bodhicitta, or the power of aspirational bodhicitta, which one is supreme? So even if the whole world considers something truly remarkable, we should still reconsider its value. Patrul Rinpoche once said, on one hand, our own vision is rather limited. On the other, our faith in karma and cyclic existence is not yet strong enough. Because of this lack of certainty or trust, when we see someone with certain worldly merit or good fortune, many will particularly admire it and aspire to it. But if we compare this to the vastness of the benefit and merit of aspirational bodhicitta, to what extent is the gap between them? This is something worth contemplating. The commentary also says, when we take all sentient beings as the object of our meditation and wishing to eliminate the countless sufferings of each and every being you see, every word here contains profound and rich meaning. being. We should think in this way. The sentient beings we focus on are limitless, and the suffering of each being is not just about facing a disaster today. It's not simply about making things a little better for them. How much more suffering will a sentient being experience in the cycle of rebirth samsara, from now until they attain Buddhahood? We aspire to eliminate all of it, not just the suffering of this lifetime, but also the suffering of all their future lives. Many charities and philanthropists today help people only when they encounter difficulties. For example, if someone suffers in an earthquake or when they cannot afford medical treatment, we help them, but will they still help them again next year or 20 years from now? It is hard to say, but for those who generate bodhicitta, for any sentient being, as long as there is suffering or difficulty, until they reach Buddhahood, they make the aspirations before all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to help them. So the scale of this intention is vastly different. Some people may think, isn't it different? Look at these charitable organizations. They have really done something and truly alleviated people's suffering. But we just make aspirations in our hearts. How can we say we eliminate the suffering of sentient beings? Some may wonder about this. But in fact, we should understand that the suffering they resolve is only temporary. After we make aspirations for all beings to attain Buddhahood, then we encourage them to study Mahayana Dharma. And once they enter the Mahayana path, eventually, one day, or even very soon, these beings will attain liberation. When they attain liberation, not only is the suffering of this life resolved, but the suffering of all future lives is also completely resolved. The very root of suffering is cut off. So is it better to give someone a painkiller or to cure their illness at its root? This is something we can choose. If we can help others resolve their suffering at the root, that is truly worthy of praise. Of course, it is important to offer temporary help and social service and engage in public welfare work. These are also indispensable. This is one of the essential spirits that we need. Indeed, society needs this warmth very much. I believe such good deeds are something we cannot do without. Sometimes, as Buddhists, we may turn a blind eye to these matters and do not care at all. That would not be reasonable. Buddhists should certainly offer help, for example, by establishing hospitals and schools, or by setting up charitable organizations and poverty alleviation organizations. These kinds of social welfare activities are essential. However, at the same time, we should not regard them as the ultimate goal. While engaging in these activities, we should also encourage others to learn the Dharma, especially the Mahayana teachings. By learning the Mahayana Dharma, sentient beings can receive lasting benefit. Not only will their suffering be relieved, but they will also attain lasting happiness. Therefore, in the future, when you have the ability, if you establish a school, when you do so, it is important not only to provide students with general education, but also to address the most fundamental issue, which is to plant the seed of Bodhi in their heart. If you run a nursing home or any other charitable organization, for beings who form connections with you, you should temporarily help them with food, clothing, and other needs. And they may naturally develop faith in Dharma through your connection with Dharma. Gradually, the most fundamental issue can be addressed. You should share them the Dharma and help them give rise to Bodhicitta. I believe this is extremely important. For example, when we perform life release, we may save a being this time, but next time it might be caught by a fisherman again. Or even if it is not caught, its lifespan may only be a few decades. So when we do life release, we should never forget to recite prayers and let them take refuge. In other words, planting the seed of Bodhi is the most fundamental point. Therefore, when we practice Mahayana Buddhism and benefit beings, we should never forget these two aspects. The first is to relieve their temporary suffering. This is one aspect. The second is to resolve the ultimate matter of birth and death. This is the second aspect. If you help sentient beings with both of these intentions, then whatever you do will certainly be of benefit to them. In our daily lives, of course, some people may not have the ability to build large schools. Even if you are not able to do so, whenever you interact with someone, you can still do these two things for them. Offer support for their mind well-being and try your best to resolve their difficulties in life or material needs. If you cannot resolve the second aspect, it is okay. Ultimately, what matters most is to help them take refuge in the three jewels and to help the sprout of bodhicitta arise in their mind stream. This is extremely important. This is my personal view. You can consider for yourselves whether it resonates with you. It is also explained in the text here that this bodhicitta can eliminate all the suffering of countless sentient beings. Those who aspire for every sentient being to be endowed with immeasurable happiness will naturally accumulate immeasurable merit. This goes without saying. So, when we study the Bodhicharyavatara, we should truly understand in our hearts what is unique about the Mahayana Dharma. This is something we must be clear about. The bodhicitta of Mahayana Buddhism is not exactly the same as the spirit of worldly charity. That would be a misunderstanding if you think they're the same. You need to develop a deeper understanding of the Mahayana teachings. Now, the second point, 2. How it surpasses worldly motivation. Such bodhicitta in the Mahayana, in fact, no matter how many sentient beings there are in the world, no worldly intention can compare to it. Such a sublime and virtuous bodhicitta is extremely rare. The following verse expresses this point. Who has such altruism as this? Does even a father or a mother? Or do the gods or else the rishis? Do even Brahmas harbor this? It says here that this kind of supreme bodhicitta, wishing for all sentient beings to attain perfect enlightenment, such a mind in this world, even parents who are considered to have the greatest kindness towards us, those who have raised and cared for us, do our father and mother possess such a mind? Do they wish for all sentient beings to attain happiness in this way? Certainly they do not. And then in the world there are some sages and celestial beings, as well as Brahma and so on. The gods refer to the gods of desire realm, the 4 great kings, and so on. And Brahma here refers to those celestial beings who possess compassion. But do they have such bodhicitta mind? They absolutely do not. Why is this so? We can understand it as follows. For each of us, our parents treat us dearly. Except for a few rare cases where some parents may lack wisdom, they sometimes even show anger towards their children, or even harbor deep resentment. But these are very rare cases. Apart from these exceptions, most parents are extremely compassionate towards their children. Many parents do not mind if they themselves eat poorly or dress poorly, as long as their children can grow up, receive an education, and find a job. They help arrange their children's marriages and family life, and even in the end, they take care of their grandchildren and so on. There are so many things that parents are always concerned about, but these parents have probably never thought, I want my child to generate bodhicitta and attain Buddhahood. This is almost unheard of, and we can see this for ourselves. Many parents not only do not have faith in Buddhism, but may even oppose it, and such actions are truly unwise. Even if they do not oppose it, their main intention is still not to think in this way. They simply want you to have enough to eat and wear, and to live a happy life. This is what most parents wish for their children. They want their children to study hard and go to university. And after university, they focus on helping them with marriage. Someone once said, my mother is always urging me to find a partner. It makes me feel very frustrated, and she is always anxious about it. I originally wanted to become a good monastic, but now I cannot. So I decided to be a good lay practitioner instead. But my mother keeps urging me every day. I feel so annoyed and even angry. Indeed, many people share this experience. This is just how society has become nowadays. Many people believe that achieving these things is the most important goal in life. They see this as the major task of a lifetime. But in reality, from that very moment, they have already fallen into real suffering. You may not even realize the kind of pressure that comes with family life. This is something everyone should be aware of. So, what do parents care about most? They are most concerned about your daily life, your housing, and whether you have enough to eat. His Holiness also spoke about this. There are so many people in the world today, so many sentient beings, but very few truly help resolve the ultimate matter of birth and death. How many parents resolve the ultimate matter of birth and death for their children? There are very, very few who do so. Most people focus on their children's food, clothing, housing, and even whether they have a car. These are the main concerns. Beyond these, there is almost nothing else. This is true not only in today's society, but also in ancient times. So for parents to truly help their children generate bodhicitta is almost unheard of. For many people, not to mention non-Buddhists, even Buddhist parents, when they care for their children, they always ask, how are you? Are you eating well recently? How is your health? These are the things they're concerned about every day, but you never hear them ask, have you generated bodhicitta? Have you benefited sentient beings? You never hear such words from them. So we can see from this that although parents are the most compassionate to us, and in this world, if we talk about the greatest love, it is probably the love parents have for their children. And then there are relatives and friends, including our own family members, who believe they have deep affection for their loved ones. But this affection is often clouded by deluded attachment. It is not truly expressed in a meaningful way. So in this world, who are the people who are truly good to you? Those who have helped you generate bodhicitta, there are almost none. Many people think, this person is good to me, that person is good to me. My family is good to me, my friends are good to me, they think. But they sometimes become obstacles to your generation of bodhicitta. They can hardly help you develop bodhicitta. This is something we can directly observe. Some people might think, well, parents and relatives are just confused. They may not understand simply because they lack wisdom. If they had wisdom, they would say otherwise. But even those who are considered wise, those who possess supernatural abilities in the world, who have mastered all worldly knowledge, and who have accomplished the power of true speech, these are the ancient sages we can see in the scriptures, descriptions of such sages, these sages who possess the power of true speech. Do they help sentient beings generate bodhicitta? Almost never. This can be seen in many stories and accounts. If you think that these sages, even though they have such qualities, and even the devas, who are not ignorant of the truth, some of whom possess the 5 supernormal powers, still, they too, whether for beings in their own heavenly realms or for us, none of them ever say, let me help you generate bodhicitta. So, even though these devas and sages have certain wisdom, their compassion is still not sufficient. And even if they have compassion, it does not necessarily mean they have bodhicitta. For example, take Brahma in the world. When the entire material world is destroyed and then gradually the world forms again, when the first dhyana heaven is formed, the material world is basically reconstituted. The first being to appear in the first dhyana heaven is the great Brahma. When the great Brahma appears there, he cannot see any realm above him, and the whole world below is empty. He is the only one. Gradually, other gods begin to appear around him. Then beings in the desire realm and even in the hell realms come into existence. At that point, Brahma thinks, because I was the first to arrive, all these beings who came after must have arisen because of me. He believes they all came from his own mind. He calls them his mind children, his sons, so he regards all these beings as his own children. Therefore, Brahma has great compassion for these sentient beings. To have such compassion for beings like Brahma, he considers all of us, including ourselves, as his children. He has this kind of compassion for so many beings. When we talk about cultivating the 4 immeasurables, we often use Brahma's attitude as an example. But even so, does he help us transcend samsara and attain perfect enlightenment? Does he help us generate bodhicitta for the sake of all beings, aspiring for their enlightenment? No, he doesn't. So even if one has such compassion, it does not necessarily lead us to the generation of bodhicitta. Some people might think, perhaps Brahma did not study the Dharma. If he had, maybe he would have helped us generate bodhicitta. But I reflect on this myself, and this isn't mentioned in other commentaries. Even studying the Dharma does not necessarily mean he will lead us to generate bodhicitta. For example, among our Dharma friends and fellow practitioners, some have followed many different teachers, but these teachers may not emphasize the importance of generating bodhicitta. They might encourage you to recite Amitabha, or chant Avalokiteshvara's mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, or ask you to do various good deeds. Of course, these are virtuous actions and do bring merit. We also think it is very good. However, a truly qualified Mahayana teacher will always encourage disciples to generate bodhicitta. If many of the teachers around us do not guide us to develop bodhicitta, then in this complex and confusing world, how would we ever know that generating bodhicitta is the highest goal? We simply would not know. And even among Dharma teachers, there are some who do not place much emphasis on bodhicitta. So if not even our Dharma teachers emphasize this, then how would our parents and teachers ever do that? Most teachers in most places, except for a very few who are Mahayana Buddhists, are unlikely to encourage you to generate bodhicitta. All of us have gone through our years as students. During that time, did any teacher ever encourage you to develop bodhicitta? Most likely not. They would tell you to study hard so you could become wealthy or get promoted or even become president one day. These are the goals they often advised. Of course, there are some teachers whose stories are quite touching. For example, last year there was a teacher named Wang Wenfu. He himself did not have a high level of education, just a middle school graduate. But how did he develop such a noble intention? He went to a village in a Yi ethnic group area where many people suffered from leprosy. In this leprosy village, none of the children had the opportunity to go to school. Most of their parents were afflicted with leprosy, and their situation was truly pitiable. So Mr. Wang went there himself and began teaching the children. He was actually very afraid of leprosy himself, but when he saw that these children had no chance to study, he decided to go and teach them anyway. While he was teaching, others advised him, "You'd be better off working elsewhere. If you work elsewhere, you can earn about 700 wen a month, but teaching these children, you only get about 24 wen a month," which made life very difficult. But teacher Wang just refused to leave. So he just lived there among people with leprosy, and most people discriminated against these families and children. No one else dared to go there. He ended up educated over 400 children and have already stayed there for 18 years. So sometimes there are people in this world whose spirit of self-sacrifice is completely different from our usual way of thinking. There truly are people who are willing to sacrifice themselves for others. Later, he became a role model for many. He became a truly remarkable person, but he probably never have encouraged these children to generate bodhicitta. Perhaps he did not, or maybe he did. He may taught them to be good people and do good deeds. So in the world, there are very few people who emphasize the importance of generating bodhicitta, not only now, but in the past. Why did Atisha and other masters place such importance on the cultivation of compassion? These stories are well known, so I won't elaborate here. So here it is said, whether it is parents in the world, Brahma, sages, or any other sentient being, none of them truly encourage us to develop great compassion. If sentient beings themselves have never had such a wish as this before, even for their own sake in dreams, how could they have it for another? So whether it is parents, as mentioned earlier, or the charitable organizations we consider so compassionate in the world, even in their dreams, they do not think of attaining Buddhahood for their own benefit. Though, of course, a few Buddhist practitioners may be exceptions. They could be both parents and teachers, and they may encourage others to generate bodhicitta. But in general, most people, even for their own benefit, have never even dreamed of attaining Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, not to mention during the day in daily lives. Even in their dreams, they never think of this. So how could they possibly encourage others to generate bodhicitta mind? It is simply impossible. We can observe ourselves. Even the thought of attaining perfect enlightenment for ourselves, many people have never think about it. Because we never think of it during the day, we will not dream of it at night. For example, if during the day I am always thinking about all sorts of things, all kinds of random matters, then in my dreams I might dream of things related to greed, anger, ignorance, or pride. Aside from these dreams, I almost never dream of aspiring to attain Buddhahood. So how could I possibly have such a wish for others? In this world, I am most attached to myself. Yet even for myself, I have not thought of attaining Buddhahood, so how could I possibly have such thoughts for others? If I have never thought of it during the day, how could it appear in my dreams at night for no reason? It's impossible. So these sentient beings will never encourage us to generate bodhicitta. Why? Because they have never even thought of it for themselves, not even in their dreams. How could they possibly inspire us to actually practice bodhicitta? That's why our practice should not just be empty words. We should all strive to put this into practice in our daily lives. There are indeed some people who emphasize the bodhisattva vows and the generation of bodhicitta. But what truly matters is to look within your own mind whether bodhicitta has genuinely arisen. This is extremely important. For example, when the full ordination ceremony is conferred and the bodhisattva vow is given, elaborate bodhisattva precept certificates are often made on one hand. This is a formality, a symbolic gesture, and that is fine. It can be very meaningful. But on the other hand, I feel that the certificate itself is not what's most important. No matter how beautiful or shiny the certificate is, if in your own mind stream there is not even a trace of the Bodhisattva vows or the altruistic intention, not even the smallest part, then no matter how large or impressive your certificate is, it is truly of no use. Of course, having a certificate can be good, and nowadays many people keep it in a yellow envelope. Some temples make very large certificates, but no matter how big the certificate is, if your bodhicitta is not great, it will not have much effect. Of course, I am not against this. It still has its importance. It is fine as a form of expression. But the most crucial thing is to look whether you have an altruistic mind within. If you do not have this altruistic intention within, then regardless of its external form, your cultivation of bodhicitta is still very challenging. Therefore, when His Holiness was still alive, he would often say, "I have taught the Dharma for many years now. If bodhicitta has not truly arisen in your mind stream, and it is only something you talk about, then it is no different from empty talk on paper." Therefore, His Holiness said, "First, I will teach the 100 deeds so that you could develop a correct view of karma and its causes and effects. The following year, I will teach you about bodhicitta, and I hope that each and every one of you will give rise to bodhicitta in your hearts." Later, our precious teacher did taught us the Bodhicharyavatara. And during this teaching, many people truly gave rise to bodhicitta in their hearts. This is something to be truly joyful about. Yesterday, I asked 2 Dharma friends during an oral exam. I asked one person, "Has bodhicitta arisen in your mind?" He replied, "I think I have, because at the beginning I have generated it, and later there have been no obstacles, so it should have arisen since." Then I asked another person, "Has bodhicitta arisen in your mind stream?" He said confidently, "Yes, it has arisen." I was very happy to hear that. Indeed, we ourselves should feel a sense of confidence about this. If, while practicing the path of the Bodhisattva, you feel nothing at all, then bodhicitta has certainly not arisen. In that case, both you and others may feel a sense of disappointment, but when someone says, "Yes, it has arisen," others also feel very happy. When they answer so confidently, "It brings me such joy," it feels very auspicious. "Wonderful, wonderful. Class is almost over," I said. So I truly believe it is very important for us to give rise to bodhicitta in our own mind stream. The wish to benefit beings that others have never had for their own sake, this special jewel of mind, is born, a wonder without precedent. Here it says, as we just discussed, others have never generated bodhicitta even for their own benefit. For most people, even for their own sake, the bodhicitta for the benefit of others has never arisen in their mind stream. Even for their own relatives and friends, for those closest to them, they have never generated bodhicitta. It simply has not happened. So this time, through the blessings of the Guru and the Dharma, in a short time, if we have generated bodhicitta, and we truly know this ourselves, that in our own mind, such a rare and precious bodhicitta that is like a wish-fulfilling jewel has already arisen, then this is extremely rare. Such a mind is truly rare and precious, extremely hard to find. Why do I say this? Because as we all know, in this vast ocean of samsara, it is already extremely rare to encounter such profound Dharma. So, having encountered the Dharma, if you do not give rise to this mind, it would be a great pity. That is why the Buddha said in the 9th volume of the Avatamsaka Sutra, "Of all virtues, bodhicitta is supreme." So among all virtues, bodhicitta is supreme. This is the reason why bodhicitta is considered most precious. Therefore, if in our own mind stream we have truly generated such bodhicitta, it is extremely rare and precious. The commentary goes on to say, whether it is a father or a mother, we already read this earlier. Among all relatives and friends, who possesses such a mind of benefit? None. There is simply no one. Even among devas, sages, or Brahma, does anyone have such a mind? They do not either. They do not possess it either, as stated in the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras. Just as the child of the Buddha possesses a mind of benefit and matures all sentient beings, a child of the Buddha refers to one who has generated bodhicitta. They wish for every sentient being to attain happiness and have the mind to bring beings to maturity. But such a mind is not found in parents, relatives, children, or close friends. So, as we discussed earlier, such an aspiration is not possessed by parents or close friends. These beings, even for their own benefit, have never given rise to such a mind, not even their dreams. So how they possibly give rise to it for the benefit of others? It is simply impossible. Therefore, it is clearly stated here how great the merit of bodhicitta truly is. So this time, I sincerely hope that you will practice diligently. If you do not practice diligently, bodhicitta will not arise without cause. So please practice with diligence and perseverance. So how could such a mind truly arise for the benefit of others? Therefore, other sentient beings, even for their own benefit, have never generated this precious bodhicitta, which is wholeheartedly concerned with the welfare of all beings, so for it to arise now is truly rare and precious. Of course, for such bodhicitta to arise in our own mind stream at the beginning, it is very difficult. His Holiness also said, if you have never practiced this before, at the beginning, to extend your mind to limitless sentient beings is quite challenging. But the mind is, after all, a conditioned phenomenon, and it can gradually be trained and adjusted. If you continue to practice steadily over time, relative bodhicitta will definitely arise in your mind. Relative bodhicitta is not so difficult to develop. So I think that in the process of study and practice, you must be diligent. Yesterday, a lay practitioner from Singapore told me over the phone that he is now practicing every day. He said, "Although I am not as diligent as my mother, I feel it is extremely rare and difficult to encounter such Mahayana teachings." He said, "The wisdom of the great masters of the past was so lofty, and their diligence was so great, they practiced with such perseverance. But now, as beings in this degenerate age, our afflictions are so strong and our karma is so heavy. So why would we not need to be diligent? Even though I feel a bit sleepy at 4:30 in the morning, I have still been practicing every day recently." I was very happy to hear this. Many of us may feel the same way, and it is truly so. The great masters of the past, in terms of accumulating merit and wisdom and overcoming afflictions, were far superior to us. From their biographies, we see that they too practiced with great diligence. Truly, why shouldn't we be diligent? We absolutely must be. So if we are diligent, then in our own mind stream, bodhicitta, like the wish-fulfilling jewel, will definitely arise in this very life. This is also attained through the blessings of the Guru and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. It can be said that most of us will have bodhicitta arise in our mind stream. This relative bodhicitta is not so difficult to develop. Many people have already made this aspiration. If you have made this aspiration and not broken your vows, then it should be still present in your mind stream. As Patru Rinpoche said in his teachings, we must never casually slander others. Otherwise, the person you are criticizing may actually be a great bodhisattva. If generated bodhicitta, they are a bodhisattva. So do not think this or that friend is so bad, or judge them in various ways. In reality, while they may have some faults, but if this person has already generated bodhicitta, then they are truly a bodhisattva. If you take a bodhisattva as your object and give rise to anger or slander, there will be serious consequences. We may discuss this further later, so do not slander one another, but instead view each other with pure perception. Anyone who studies Mahayana Buddhism is truly different from those of other dispositions. So when you see someone, if they are older, think of them as an elder bodhisattva. If they are younger, think of them as a young bodhisattva. Visualize in this way. All right, we will stop here for today.
Bandara Banma Sadar